On Mother's Day, my daughter-in-law canceled my seat at the table and announced, "The real gift will be when that witch ends up in a nursing home." On Monday, I canceled the check for her mortgage. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." I stood in my kitchen, arranging delicate pink roses in a crystal vase I had saved for special occasions. My Mother's Day gift for Christine, my daughter-in-law. The sunlight streamed through the windows, catching on the polished surface of the high, hand-painted teacup set I'd bought for her, a splurge I couldn't really afford on my fixed income. But I wanted her to feel special. 60 years old, and I still believed in trying. Still believed that if I just found the right gift, said the right words, somehow the wall between us would crumble. My phone buzzed on the counter. David, my son. My heart lifted as I wiped my hands on my apron and reached for it. "Mom," his voice sounded strained. "About tomorrow." Something in his tone made me grip the edge of the counter. "What about it, honey? I've got Christine's gift all ready, and I made those lemon cookies the kids love." A heavy silence stretched between us. "That's just it, Mom. Christine thought it would be easier to just keep it small this year. Family. Only." My hand froze midair. "But I am family." "You know what I mean, Mom." His voice dropped lower. "Just us and the kids. Christine's parents are coming too." The roses blurred before my eyes. "Her parents?" "Yeah, they're staying the weekend." I swallowed hard, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I see. Well, I could just drop by briefly. I won't stay long. I just want to give Christine—" "Mom, please don't make this difficult." The frustration in his voice cut through me like a knife. "Christine has been really stressed lately with the house renovations and everything." The house renovations. The house I'd helped them buy. The mortgage I'd been paying for them since David lost his job last year. The mortgage that had been draining my retirement fund month after month. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Not really." After we hung up, I stood there, staring at the roses I'd so carefully arranged. I'd always believed that families stuck together no matter what. That belief had guided me through my hardest days after Robert died, leaving me alone with a 12-year-old son to raise. I picked up my car keys. I would drive by their house, just to drop off the gifts. I wouldn't even go inside. What harm could that do? 20 minutes later, I pulled up to their 2-story colonial. The house was quiet, no sign of anyone. Maybe they were out shopping for tomorrow. I was about to leave the gifts on the porch when I heard Christine's voice drifting through the open window. "No, Mom, don't worry about her showing up." Christine's laugh was cold. "I made sure David told her to stay away." I froze, gift bag clutched, to my chest. "She's not invited this year." A pause. "Or any year, if I have my way." I should have left, should have walked away. But my feet remained rooted to the spot. "You know what would be a real Mother's Day present?" Christine continued, her voice dripping with contempt. "When that old Megara finally goes into a nursing home. That would be cause for celebration." The gift bag slipped from my fingers, the teacup set shattering on the concrete. I barely noticed the sound, barely felt the pain as a shard cut my finger. When I bent to pick up the pieces, that old Megara. I drove home in a daze, tears blurring my vision. Once inside, I collapsed onto my sofa, the weight of Christine's words crushing my chest. For years, I'd been making excuses for her behavior. She was under stress. She came from a different generation. She just needed time to warm up to me. I'd swallowed her snide remarks at family gatherings, pretended not to notice when she forgot to include me in family photos. And all the while, I'd been helping them financially, paying their mortgage, contributing to my grandchildren's college, funds, going without so they could have more. My gaze fell on my checkbook, sitting on the coffee table. The mortgage payment for their house was due next week. I'd already written the check, waiting to mail it out on Monday. I picked it up, staring at the amount. $2,100, nearly half my monthly income. With trembling fingers, I tore it in half. Then I called the bank and put a stop payment order on all future checks to the mortgage company. "Are you sure, Mrs. Harrison?" the bank representative asked. "This is a recurring payment you've been making for over a year." "I'm sure," I said, my voice stronger than I'd felt in years. "That payment stops today." When I hung up, I noticed my hands had stopped shaking. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. Tomorrow was Mother's Day, and I would spend it alone. But it would also be the first day of my new life. A life where I would no longer sacrifice my dignity for people who saw me as nothing, but a burden to be tolerated. I looked around my small living room, at the photos of David and the grandkids. What would happen now? Would Christine allow me to see my grandchildren again once she realized the money had stopped? The thought pierced my heart like a physical pain. But another voice, stronger and clearer, rose within me. What kind of example? Am I setting for my grandchildren if I allow myself to be treated this way? The phone rang. David's number flashed on the screen. Too soon for him to know about the check, but perhaps Christine had seen me outside their house. I let it ring. 3 days passed without a word from David or Christine. 3 days of jumping whenever my phone rang, of rehearsing what I would say. When they finally called, 3 days of questioning whether I'd made the right decision. I sat at my kitchen table, sorting through old photo albums. There was David at 7, missing his front teeth, proudly holding up a fish he'd caught with his father. Robert's death from a sudden heart attack 3 years later had shattered our world, leaving me a 35-year-old widow with a grieving child and a mountain of debt. I traced Robert's face in the photograph. "I did everything I could," I whispered to him. "I kept our boy safe." And I had. I'd worked 2 jobs, administrative assistant by day, waitress by night, to keep a roof over our heads. I'd helped David with homework between shifts, attended every school event even when it meant going without sleep. I'd taken out a second mortgage on our house to pay for his college education. I never remarried, though there had been opportunities. My life revolved around David, around giving him the future Robert and I had dreamed of for him. When he met Christine in his senior year of college, I was thrilled. She was ambitious, confident, studying business. She had plans. What I didn't realize then was that her plans had always included my money, not me. The wedding was the first sign. Christine insisted on a lavish affair at an expensive venue. When I gently suggested something more modest, she'd looked at me with thinly veiled contempt. "This is our special day," she'd said. "We want it to be perfect. Don't you want that for your son?" Of course I did. So I withdrew money from my 401k, incurring penalties I couldn't afford, to give them the wedding of Christine's dreams. After they married, the distance grew. David called less frequently. Invitations to dinner became rare. When I did visit, Christine would find reasons to cut the visits short. There was always something. She had a headache, the kids were overtired, they had plans they'd forgotten about. Yet when they needed financial help, suddenly I was family again. 3 years ago, when they wanted to buy the Colonial in the upscale neighborhood, David had come to me, eyes downcast. "The bank won't approve us for the full amount," he'd admitted. "But it's the perfect house, Mom, in the best school district for the kids." I'd offered to help with the down payment, draining the last of my savings. But then David lost his job in the tech industry, downsizing, and they couldn't make the mortgage payments. Christine refused to move to a more affordable house. That's when I started paying their mortgage, a temporary measure that somehow became permanent. The phone rang, startling me from my memories. David's number flashed on the screen. This time I answered, "Where's the mortgage payment?" No greeting, no. "How are you, Mom?" Just anger. "Hello to you too, David. I said, my voice calmer than I felt. Mom? The bank called. They said the payment is past due. What's going on? I took a deep breath. I'm not making the payment anymore, David. What? His voice rose. You can't do that. Actually, I can. It's my money. But we had an agreement. You said you'd help us. That was before I heard what Christine really thinks of me. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Before I found out I was uninvited from Mother's Day while her parents were welcome. Before I heard your wife say that me going to a nursing home would be a real cause for celebration. Silence. Then, you were spying on us? The accusation stung. No, David. I came to drop off gifts, and Christine was talking loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. She didn't mean it, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. She was just venting. About what? What have I ever done to her except give and give until there's nothing left for me? Another silence. I could almost see him running his hand through his hair the way he did when stressed, a gesture so like his father's. Mom, we need that money. We can't make the payment without it. Then sell the house, David. Get something you can afford. We can't do that. Now he sounded panicked. The market's down, we'd lose money, and the kids' school, those are your choices to make, I said, surprised at my own firmness. But I won't be paying anymore. Is this blackmail? His voice turned cold. You're using money to punish us because your feelings got hurt? Something broke inside me. After everything I'd sacrificed, everything. I'd given up. My son thought I was being petty. This isn't about punishment, David. It's about respect. My voice trembled but held steady. I've spent my entire life putting you first. I went without so you could have what you needed. I'm 60 years old with barely enough saved for retirement because I gave everything to you. And in return, you let your wife treat me like I'm nothing. That's not fair. No, it's not fair. None of this is fair. But I'm done. I paused, gathering strength. I love you, David. I always will. But I won't set myself on fire to keep you and Christine warm anymore. I hung up before he could respond, before my resolve could crumble. Outside my window, spring flowers were blooming in my small garden. I'd planted those bulbs in the fall, an act of faith that I would be here to see them flower. Now they're vibrant. Colors seemed like a sign, life continuing, beauty emerging even after the harshest winter. My phone buzzed with a text from David. We need to talk about this in person. I'm coming over tomorrow. I set the phone down without replying. Tomorrow would come soon enough. For now, I walked outside to my garden and began pulling weeds, my hands working in the rich soil. It was time to tend to my own life for a change. Time to see what might bloom if I redirected all that care and attention toward myself. The doorbell rang at precisely 10 o'clock the next morning. I'd been up since dawn, too anxious to sleep, rehearsing what I would say to David. I smoothed my hands over my cardigan and opened the door. David stood on my porch, his face drawn with tension. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. Come in, I said, stepping aside. He walked past me without a word, his shoulders rigid. In the living room, he remained standing, hands jammed in his pockets. Would you like some coffee? I asked, reaching for normalcy in this decidedly abnormal situation. I'm not here for coffee, Mom, he said, his voice flat. I'm here about the mortgage. Of course, not to check on me, not to apologize for excluding me from Mother's Day. Just the money. I sat down on the sofa, suddenly bone-weary. Sit down, David, please. He hesitated, then perched on the edge of the armchair across from me. We need that money. The bank called yesterday. If we miss another payment, they'll start foreclosure proceedings. I told you my decision, I said, quietly. I'm not paying anymore. Because of some stupid comment Christine made? He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. She was just having a bad day. This isn't about one comment, I said. It's about years of disrespect, years of being treated like an ATM rather than a mother. That's not fair, isn't it? I opened the drawer of the side table and pulled out a small notebook. Do you know what this is? It's every financial gift I've given you and Christine since you got married. The down payment on your house, the money for renovations, the monthly mortgage payments, the loans that were never repaid. I opened it, turning pages. It's over $300,000, David. Almost everything I had saved for retirement. His face flushed. You never said those were loans. You offered to help. And you never declined, I countered. You never even said thank you. And all the while, Christine was making it clear how little she valued my presence in your lives. That's not true, David protested, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. Last Christmas, I said, she accidentally forgot to tell me dinner had been moved up 2 hours. I arrived to find everyone finishing dessert. David shifted uncomfortably. That was a misunderstanding. The family vacation to the beach last summer, I only found out about it from Facebook after you'd already gone. We thought you wouldn't want to. Your anniversary party? I was seated at a table with strangers, far from family. Mom, you're being dramatic. Am I? I walked to my desk and returned with a stack of cards. Birthday cards for the children, Christmas checks, all returned with wrong address written on them, even though my address hasn't changed in 20 years. David's face paled. I never saw those. Of course you didn't. I set them down between us. Christine made sure of that, just like she makes sure I rarely see my grandchildren. Did you know Lucy asked me last time I saw her why I don't love her anymore? Because Christine told her that's why I never come around. David's shoulders slumped. She wouldn't do that, neighbor. Did. I leaned forward. David, I've tried for years to build a relationship with Christine. I've overlooked slights, swallowed insults, and continued to support you financially, but I can't do it anymore. I won't. The doorbell rang again, startling. Us both. Are you expecting someone? David asked. I wasn't, but I had a sinking feeling I knew who it was. I opened the door to find Christine standing there, her expression a mask of righteous indignation. I knew he wouldn't handle this right, she said, brushing past me into the house. Her eyes landed on David. What's taking so long? Just get her to sign the check and let's go. The chill in the room was palpable. David looked mortified. Christine, he began. That's not why— Oh, stop it. She turned to me, arms crossed. Look, I know you're upset about Mother's Day, but this is childish. We need that money. It's my money, I said quietly, and I've decided not to give it to you anymore. Christine's face darkened. After everything we've done for you? I couldn't help it. I laughed. It was so absurd, so completely backward. What exactly have you done for me, Christine? Besides take my money and keep me from my family? I've tolerated you, she snapped, her veneer cracking. Do you have any idea how tiresome it is, having you hover around, always wanting attention? David was fine until you started playing the poor lonely widow card. David stood up so abruptly the coffee table rattled. Christine, that's enough. No, it's not enough, she shot back. Your mother has been manipulating you for years with her guilt trips and her checkbook. Well, we don't need her. We kind of do need her checkbook right now, David said quietly. And something inside me broke, my own son, admitting that my value to them was purely financial. Christine turned back to me, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. Priscilla, we all say things we don't mean when we're upset. Let's put this behind us. The mortgage payment is no longer my responsibility, I finished for her. Neither are you. Christine's facade crumbled completely. You smug, self-righteous, old woman. Do you think David would even visit you if you weren't paying our bills? Do you think the kids would care about their grandmother if you weren't bringing them expensive gifts? David stared at his wife in horror. Christine, stop. No, let her continue, I said, a strange calm washing over me. Let her tell the truth, for once. Christine laughed bitterly. The truth? The truth is you've been buying your way into our lives because you have nothing else to offer. No one else to burden with your neediness. And now you're throwing a tantrum because you finally realized we've been using you. The silence that followed was absolute. David looked like he'd been struck. Christine's chest heaved with anger. And I felt oddly liberated. Thank you for your honesty, I said, my voice steady. Now I'd like you both to leave. Mom, David began, but I held up my hand. I've heard enough, I said. We have nothing more to discuss. Christine grabbed her. Purse? Fine, come on, David, she's made her choice. David hesitated, torn between wife and mother. David, Christine's voice was a whip. Now. He looked at me, then followed her to the door. But before stepping out, he turned back. I didn't know, Mom. About the cards, about what she said to Lucy. I swear. I nodded once. Whether I believed him or not no longer mattered. When the door closed behind them, I sank onto the sofa, trembling not with sadness, but with a fierce, unexpected pride. I had finally stood my ground. The mask had fallen. Now it was time to see what lay beneath. The weeks following that confrontation passed in a strange haze. I moved through my days mechanically, grocery shopping, tending my garden, watching television programs I barely registered. The silence of my phone was deafening. No calls from David, no pictures of the grandchildren, no demands for money. The silence hurt, but less than I expected. There was a curious freedom in it, too. I was folding laundry one Wednesday afternoon, when my doorbell rang. Opening it, I found Lucy, my 11-year-old granddaughter, standing on my porch, her bike thrown haphazardly on the lawn behind her. Lucy! I gasped, pulling her into a hug. What are you doing here? Does your father know where you are? She shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. Dad and Mom are fighting all the time, about the house and about you. I heard Dad tell Mom that the bank is going to take our house away. My heart sank. So it had begun. The foreclosure proceedings. I miss you, Grandma, Lucy said, burying her face against my shoulder. Mom said you didn't want to see us anymore, but I knew that. Wasn't true. I led her into the kitchen and set about making her favorite, hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, even though it was warm outside. Some situations required comfort food. Your mother wasn't telling the truth, I said gently, setting the mug in front of her. I've missed you terribly, Lucy nodded, sipping her cocoa. Dad's really sad all the time. He lost his job again last week. Mom keeps crying about the house. So that was why David hadn't called. On top of the mortgage trouble, he'd lost his job. Again. It was the third time in 5 years. The tech industry could be brutal. Are you and Dad fighting? Lucy asked, her eyes wide with worry. Is that why you're not helping with our house anymore? I took a deep breath, considering how to explain adult complexities to a child. Your dad and I have a disagreement about respect, about how family members should treat each other. Is it because Mom's mean to you? Lucy asked bluntly. I heard her tell Aunt Sarah that you were a controlling witch who needed to mind your own business. I nearly choked on my tea, out of the mouths of babes. It's complicated, sweetheart, I said finally. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and I love you very much. When I called David to let him know Lucy was with me, his relief was palpable. I'll come get her right away, he said, his voice tight. Let her stay for dinner, I suggested. I'll bring her home after. A pause. Christine won't like that. Christine doesn't have to know, I replied, surprised at my own boldness. Lucy came to me, David. She's worried about you two fighting all the time. Another, longer. Pause it then. Fine, but I'll pick her up. I need to talk to you anyway. David arrived just after 7, looking exhausted. Lucy ran to hug him, chattering about the cookies we'd baked and how I'd let her help deadhead the roses in my garden. Go wait in the car, sweetheart, David said, finally. I need to talk to Grandma. When she was gone, he stood awkwardly in my living room, hands in his pockets, just as he had weeks ago. But something had changed. The anger was gone, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. You lost your job, I said. He nodded. Budget cuts. They laid off 20% of the staff. And the house? We missed 2 payments. He sank into a chair, running, a hand over his face. The bank sent a formal notice. If we don't catch up within 30 days, they'll start foreclosure. I said nothing, waiting. Christine's parents can't help. Her dad lost most of his retirement in some investment scheme last year. They're barely getting by themselves. I'd never known that. Christine always spoke of her family as if they were financially secure. We're going to have to sell, David admitted. But like I told you, the market's down. We'll lose money. Maybe walk away with nothing after the bank gets its share. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Not sorry enough to open my checkbook again, but sorry for the stress he was under. He nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. I found these in Christine's desk drawer. I was looking for the mortgage paperwork and found, well, these. I opened the envelope to find birthday cards, Christmas cards, all from me to the children, all unopened. There were more, David said quietly. Going back years, she kept them all. Said she was protecting the kids from my manipulative mother. My hands trembled as I looked at the colorful envelopes, each containing gifts and notes of love that had never reached their intended recipients. I didn't know, David whispered. I swear I didn't know she was doing this. What about everything else? I asked. The way she spoke to me? The accidental exclusions from family events? He looked away. I knew about some of it. I told myself she was just territorial, that she'd warm up to you eventually. He met my eyes again. I didn't want to see it. It was easier to believe everything was fine. And now? David sighed heavily. Now everything's falling apart. Christine blames me for not handling you better, for letting you cut us off financially. She says if I'd been a better son, none of this would have happened. The irony was almost painful. After all those years of sacrifice, of putting David, first I was being cast as the villain for finally saying, enough. What do you want from me, David? I asked directly. I don't know. He stood restless. I don't expect you to bail us out again. I don't have the right to ask that. No, I agreed. You don't. But I don't want to lose you, he said, his voice breaking. The kids need their grandmother. And I need my mom. Need. Not want. Need. The word struck me. All these years, I'd been needed for what I could provide. Money, childcare, emotional support. Always giving, rarely receiving. I spoke to a lawyer last week, I said, changing the subject. About the house. David's head snapped up. A lawyer? Why? Because I've contributed over $150,000 to that house, I said. The down payment came from me. I've been making mortgage payments for 18 months. That gives me a financial interest in the property. David paled. You're suing us? No, I said. But I wanted to know where I stood legally. The lawyer said I could make a claim against any proceeds from the sale. Or I could take partial ownership. Partial ownership? David repeated, confused. I could put money in to stop the foreclosure in exchange for a legal stake in the house, I explained. Not a loan, actual co-ownership. Hope flickered across his face. You'd do that? I'm considering it, I said carefully, but there would be conditions. What conditions? First, I would have regular, unimpeded access to my grandchildren. He nodded quickly. Of course. Second, I would be treated with respect. No more forgetting to invite me to family events. No more intercepted cards and gifts. Another nod, more somber. And third, I said, looking him straight in the eye, Christine would need to apologize. Not a fake apology, not a performance for your benefit. A genuine acknowledgement of how she's treated me. David's face fell. She'll never do that. Then, I guess we've reached an impasse, I said, rising to show him out. Because I won't compromise on my dignity anymore, David. Not even for you. He left with Lucy, shoulders slumped in defeat. That night, I sat in my garden as dusk fell, watching. Fireflies dance among my rose bushes. I thought about the house, about the grandchildren, about the complicated knot of love and resentment that tied me to my son. I hadn't said no, but I hadn't said yes either. For once, I was putting myself first, and it felt both terrifying and— Right, my phone buzzed with a text from David. Can we talk again tomorrow? Just us. I typed back a simple yes. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms. The price of dignity was high, but I was finally willing to pay it. David arrived at my house the next morning, alone. I noticed immediately that he wasn't wearing his wedding ring. Coffee? I offered, trying to keep things normal, whatever normal was these days. He nodded, following me into the kitchen. We sat across from each other at my small table, the silence hanging heavy between us. Christine and I had a huge fight last night, he finally said, staring into his mug. About the cards she kept from the kids, about how she's treated you. I wrapped my hands around my own coffee, feeling its warmth. I'm sorry it's come to this, David. I told her what you said, about helping with the house in exchange for respect and an apology. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. She said she'd rather live in a cardboard box than apologize to you. Despite everything, that stung. I see. I don't think she meant it, David said quickly. She's just proud and scared. She's never had to worry about money before. That's not true, though, is it? I said gently. You said her parents are struggling, too. David looked surprised. How did you know that? You mentioned it yesterday, that her father lost his retirement savings. He frowned, confusion crossing his face. I didn't know about that until last week. Christine always said her parents were doing great, that they were self-made, unlike you, who— He stopped abruptly. Unlike me? Who what? I pressed. Who coasted on Dad's life insurance and played the victim card, he admitted, looking ashamed. That's what she's been saying for years. I nearly laughed. Robert's life insurance had barely covered the funeral expenses. Everything I had, I'd earned. Through decades of hard work. David, your father's life insurance was $25,000. It paid for the funeral and kept us afloat for about 3 months. After that, I worked 2 jobs to support us. I know, he said quietly. I remember. Then why would you believe her? He had no answer for that. Where are you staying? I asked, changing the subject. At a motel near work. Well, near where work used to be. He gave a hollow laugh. I told Christine I needed space to think. And the children? They're with her. I'm going to see them this weekend. He hesitated. I was hoping you might come with me. They miss you. My heart leapt at the thought of seeing my grandchildren, but caution held me back. What about Christine? She'll be at her yoga class. It's the one thing she won't give up, even with our money. Problems. So we're sneaking around behind her back? The idea didn't sit well with me. That's not a solution, David. I know. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of his father that my heart ached. But I don't know what else to do. She won't bend, and you won't bend, and the kids are caught in the middle. I sighed. He was right about one thing. The children shouldn't suffer because of adult conflicts. All right, I agreed reluctantly. But only this once. After that, we need a real plan. Thank you. He looked relieved, then hesitant. Mom, about the house. What exactly did the lawyer say? That I have options, I answered carefully. Given how much money I've put into it, I could make a legal claim? Would you? His voice was small. I understand if you want to, but it would. I haven't decided yet, I interrupted. But if I do help, it would be as a co-owner, not just handing over money. I'd need my name on the deed, David. He nodded slowly. That makes sense. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything, for not seeing what was happening, for taking your help for granted. I know, I said softly. I've never doubted that you love me, David, but love without respect isn't enough. After he left, I went into my spare bedroom, which had become something of a storage room over the years. Boxes of old photographs, Robert's books, mementos from a lifetime. It was time to sort through them, to decide what to keep and what to let go. In one box, I found an old sketchbook. Art had been my passion before marriage, before motherhood, before the countless responsibilities that had swallowed my days. I'd been good once, good enough that my high school art teacher had encouraged me to apply to art school. Instead, I'd gotten a practical degree in business administration, met Robert, gotten married at 22. The sensible path. The expected path. I flipped through the yellowed pages, surprised by the talent evident in those old drawings. Portraits, landscapes, still lifes rendered in careful charcoal strokes. Why had I stopped? On impulse, I drove to the art supply store downtown. The owner, a woman about my age with silver hair and paint-stained fingers, helped me select pencils, charcoal, watercolors. Getting back into it? She asked as she rang up my purchases. After 40 years, I admitted. I don't know if I still can? She smiled, handing me the bag. It's like riding a bicycle. The muscle memory is there, waiting for you to wake it up. That evening, I set up a small easel by the window and began to sketch the view of my garden. My strokes were hesitant at first, rusty from disuse. But gradually, as the sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, something inside me remembered. Something woke up. The next day, I visited the community center and found they offered art classes 3 times a week. I signed up immediately, ignoring the flutter of nervousness in my stomach. When was the last time I'd done something purely for myself? By week's end, I'd attended my first class, watercolor basics. The instructor, a gentleman named Ellis with kind eyes and patience to spare, had praised my natural sense of composition. You've done this before, he'd said, and I'd nodded, unable to explain the complex emotions that simple acknowledgement triggered. In class, I met Martha, a widow like me, who invited me to join her and some friends for coffee afterward. I surprised myself by saying yes. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, filled with the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Martha's friends, Judith, Eleanor, and Doris, welcomed me without hesitation, drawing me into their conversation about books, politics, and the upcoming art exhibition at the local gallery. You should submit something, Judith suggested when I mentioned I was picking up art again. The deadline's not for another month. Oh, I couldn't, I protested. I'm just a beginner. Again. We're all beginners again at something, Eleanor said. Wisely. That's the beauty of our age. We get to reinvent ourselves. Reinvention. The word lingered in my mind as I drove home, as I prepared for bed, as I lay awake thinking about the weekend, about seeing my grandchildren, about the house and Christine and all the tangled threads of family that still bound me, even as I was discovering this new part of myself. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, I wasn't defined solely by my roles. Mother, grandmother, financial supporter. I was becoming something else, something more. I was becoming myself. A year passed, bringing changes I never could have imagined that terrible Mother's Day when Christine's words had shattered my illusions about my place in my son's family. It is Mother's Day again. The morning sun streams through my kitchen windows as I arrange a bouquet of tulips from my garden. The house smells of cinnamon and sugar, homemade rolls rising in the oven, a recipe I'd perfected over the winter. The doorbell rings, and I smile, knowing who it is. Grandma! Lucy and James rush in, arms outstretched for hugs. Behind them, David stands with a wrapped package and a sheepish grin. Happy Mother's Day, he says, kissing my cheek. Something smells amazing. Cinnamon rolls, I tell him, accepting the gift. Your favorite. Lucy tugs at my hand. Grandma, wait till you see the painting I made at school. Dad brought it for you. I can't wait, I say, genuinely excited. At 12, Lucy has shown a real talent for art, a talent I've encouraged with supplies and lessons. As we settle in the living room, so much brighter now with my own watercolor landscapes hanging on the walls, I can't help marveling at how much has changed. The house, David and Christine's beautiful colonial, had gone into foreclosure after all. Despite my lawyer's assurance that I had a valid claim on the property, I chose not to pursue it. Some prices were too high, even for justice. David and Christine separated 2 months after our confrontation. The combination of financial stress and exposed lies proved too much for their marriage. Christine moved in with her sister in California, taking the children with her. David found an apartment near his new job, a step down from his previous position, but steady work at a smaller tech company. The separation wasn't easy on anyone. The children called me weekly, their voices full of confusion and hurt. Christine, surprising us all, hadn't poisoned them against me. Perhaps losing everything had humbled her, or perhaps she simply lacked the energy for ongoing warfare. David visited them monthly, and gradually, a co-parenting routine emerged. Then, 6 months ago, Christine announced she'd met someone new. She wanted to stay in California permanently, but was willing to let the children spend summers and holidays with their father. David had been devastated, both by the finality of his marriage ending and by the prospect of seeing his children only part-time. But he'd also found a strange new resilience. Mom, he'd called me one night, his voice stronger than I'd heard in months. I'm going to ask for full custody. Are you sure? I'd asked, concerned about what that would mean for him and for the children. I'm sure, he'd said. Christine's not a bad mother, but her life is going in a different direction now. And the kids miss home, their friends, their schools. They miss you. That last part had brought tears to my eyes. To everyone's surprise, Christine hadn't fought him. She'd agreed to let the children return to their father, with generous visitation, rights for herself. Her new relationship was moving quickly, and her new partner had children of his own. A ready-made family was apparently more appealing than fighting for custody of her existing one. And so, 3 months ago, Lucy and James had returned home with their father. David had found a modest house to rent, not far from my own. And suddenly, I was back in their lives, not as a checkbook, but as a grandmother. A real one, who picked them up from school sometimes, who taught Lucy watercolors and helped James with his science projects. Open your gift, Mom, David urges now, pulling me from my reflections. I unwrap the package to find a beautifully framed photograph of me with the children, taken at the art show where one of my paintings had won an honorable mention. We're all, beaming at the camera, Lucy and James pressed against me, my arms around them, happiness captured in amber. It's perfect, I whisper, tears threatening. David helps me hang it in the place of honor above the fireplace. The children rush outside to play in the garden while we finish preparing lunch. I got the promotion, David says casually as he slices strawberries for the salad. David, that's wonderful, I exclaim. Why didn't you tell me right away? He shrugs, but I can see the pride in his stance. wanted to save some good news for today. I'm so proud of you, I tell him, and mean it. I couldn't have done it without you, he says quietly. Not just the practical help, but you showed me what resilience looks like, what it means to respect yourself. I squeeze his arm, too moved to speak. I've been thinking, he continues, about the future, about buying a house again someday, when I've saved enough for a proper down payment. That's a good goal, I say cautiously. We've both learned to be wary about money conversations. This time, I'm doing it right, he assures me, reading my thoughts. No overreaching, no financial help from you. I never minded helping David, I remind him. I just minded being taken for granted. He nods, understanding. I know. But I need to do this on my own. For myself. And to show the kids that you don't need to live beyond your means to be happy. It's a lesson that took him 40 years to learn. But I'm grateful he finally has. The children burst back in, bearing dandelions they've picked from the lawn. For the table, Lucy announces, arranging them in a small vase with the seriousness of a professional florist. We sit down to lunch, a simple meal of quiche, salad, and my homemade rolls. Before we eat, David raises his glass of sparkling cider. To Mom, he says, his eyes meeting mine, for teaching us what truly matters. The children echo the toast enthusiastically, and I blink back tears as I raise my own glass. After lunch, while the children help David with the dishes, another positive change. He's teaching them responsibility now. I step out onto my porch. The spring air is soft with promise, my garden a riot of color. Martha will be picking me up at 3 for our weekly art group. We've been meeting regularly for months now, a circle of women supporting each other through life's transitions. Martha through her recent retirement, Judith through her husband's illness, me through the reshaping of my family. I've found friendship there, connection, purpose. My watercolors have improved to the point where a local gallery has agreed to display some in their summer exhibition. A small achievement, perhaps, but one that fills me with quiet pride. Inside, I hear the children laughing, David singing off-key to some pop song on the radio. The sounds of family, my family, rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect rather than obligation. Last week, I'd received a card from Christine. A proper apology, years too late, acknowledging the hurt she'd caused. I appreciated the gesture more than I'd expected to, though I had no desire to resume any close relationship. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as ashes. The front door opens, and David joins me on the porch, handing me a fresh cup of tea. Happy? He asks simply. I look at him, my son, who nearly lost himself but found his way back. Who's learning, as we all are, that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. Yes, I answer truthfully. I'm happy. We sit in comfortable silence as the afternoon sun warms us. In the garden, the children are playing tag, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Inside, my new painting waits on the easel, half finished. Tomorrow, I'll add more color, more definition. Tomorrow, I'll continue creating the life I want. Today, it's enough to be here. Present, respected, loved not for what I give, but for who I am. The price of dignity was high. But oh, how worth it.